My name is Stella. For as long as I can remember, my name always seemed to come with an added, "Oh, Lisa's sister." 3 years separated us, but the distance felt much greater when it came to our parents' attention. Lisa was always radiant, popular at school, surrounded by friends, with talents that blossomed for everyone to see. I, on the other hand, was quieter, living in my own world of books and ideas. At school, while Lisa shone on the theater stages and led the volleyball team, I contented myself with my quiet corners in the library and the silent satisfaction of my good grades. At home, it was the same melody. If Lisa got an A, it was a cause for celebration. If I got an A, it was a "that's good, Stella." There wasn't the same outpouring, the same recognition. I remember the school science fair in my 8th grade as if it were yesterday. I dedicated weeks to my project on renewable energy, researching, building prototypes, nervous and excited to present. I won first place. Happiness flooded me, a wave of pride that I longed to share with my parents. But they couldn't go. They had a very important commitment, accompanying Lisa to the store to choose a special dress for her ballet performance. "She needs all our support, Stella," my mother said on the phone with a voice that left no room for discussion. The victory at the science fair seemed to wilt a little at that moment. I grew up accustomed to Lisa's shadow, to the subtle and not-so-subtle comparisons. "Lisa is an example for you, Stella. See how communicative she is, how she stands out." I admired her, recognized her qualities, but felt a knot in my chest every time my effort, my achievements, seemed invisible in my parents' eyes. It was as if the stage of life already had a defined protagonist, and I was just a spectator in the wings. Years passed, I went to college, and there I dedicated myself more and more to my studies. I was always very focused, made a few friends, but it was in my last year that I met Lewis. At first, we were just friends, but little by little our relationship blossomed until we fell in love. Finding Lewis in my last year of college was like discovering a ray of sunshine on a cloudy day. He saw the Stella far beyond what my family saw. He was interested in my ideas, laughed at my shy jokes, valued my quietness. Our relationship blossomed naturally, and moving in together after a year felt like the most logical step in the world. With him, I was building something of my own, something that had nothing to do with the expectations of others or constant comparison. Lewis's proposal was a magical moment, a sigh of relief and happiness. Finally, I would have my own center, my own celebration. We decided to have an engagement lunch, an intimate moment to share our joy with family and closest friends. I wanted them to see my shine, the shine that Lewis had always seen in me. I chose a light dress in a shade of blue that highlighted the color of my eyes, and I spent extra time doing my hair, nervous and anxious. Lewis looked charming, with that smile that always disarms me and makes me feel like the luckiest woman in the world. The restaurant we chose was cozy, with soft lighting and well-set tables. Our parents, aunts, uncles, and some close friends were already there when we arrived. The hugs and congratulations were warm, and for a brief moment, I felt that genuine family warmth that I longed for so much. My mother commented on how beautiful I looked, something rare enough to make me smile genuinely. While the waiters served the appetizers, the atmosphere was light and lively. Lewis held my hand across the table, and we exchanged a knowing look, a mixture of happiness and anticipation for what was to come. I was radiant, finally feeling that things were in the right place, that I was building my own story, far from the eternal comparison with Lisa. Then, Lisa cleared her throat, drawing everyone's attention. She was particularly smiley, with a different sparkle in her eyes. Martin, her boyfriend, held her hand protectively. I felt a pang of curiosity, but nothing that clouded the joy of my day. "Guys, I have news," she announced, with that intonation that always preceded something that would inevitably put her in the center of attention. An expectant silence fell over the table. My heart gave a little jump, but I imagined it would be something related to her work or maybe a trip. "We're having a baby," she said, and a radiant smile lit up her face. The reaction was immediate and effusive. Applause, shouts of joy, hugs. My parents were the first to get up, rushing to hug Lisa and Martin. Tears streamed down my mother's face as she exclaimed, "Oh, my daughter. What a wonderful blessing." My father patted Martin on the back, visibly moved. In the middle of that whirlwind of excitement, I froze. A hesitant smile appeared on my lips, and I tried to hug Lisa, saying a muffled congratulations through the lump forming in my throat. She hugged me back quickly, but her eyes were already fixed on my mother, who was showering her with kisses and affection. It was then that my mother said those words, with a tone of genuine euphoria. "Now this is wonderful news." At that moment, I felt as if a bucket of cold water had been thrown over me. My mother's words echoed in my mind, cutting through all the joy I had felt until then. It was as if my engagement, my moment, had been completely erased, made insignificant in the face of Lisa's news. Attention turned completely to the pregnancy. My mother began asking questions about morning sickness, cravings, the first few months. My father offered suggestions for names and offered to help with whatever was needed. Lisa, radiant, answered all the questions, absorbing every gaze, every exclamation of surprise and happiness. Louis squeezed my hand again, this time tighter, as if trying to bring me back to reality. I looked at him and saw in his eyes a mixture of understanding and indignation. He knew how important that day was to me. The rest of the lunch became a blur. Conversations revolved around the baby, the preparations, what Lisa's life would be like as a mother. My engagement ring seemed to shine less brightly, overshadowed by the aura of my sister's pregnancy. The congratulations Louis and I received after Lisa's announcement sounded like a distant echo, almost a formality. I felt a tightness in my chest, that old feeling of being left aside, of not being important enough. It was as if my life, my achievements, my plans, were always secondary compared to Lisa's. That lunch, which should have been the celebration of my future, turned into another painful reminder of the family dynamic that had always made me feel invisible. Inside, a wave of sadness and frustration grew with each comment, each admiring glance directed at my sister. I smiled, tried to participate in the conversations, but the truth is that my heart was heavy, and the joy of that day had vanished, leaving behind a bitter taste of disappointment. The days that followed the engagement lunch were strange. Louis tried to cheer me up, to remind me that our wedding was what really mattered, our future. But the truth is that the family atmosphere had changed drastically. Conversations with my mother invariably ended with updates on Lisa's pregnancy, the morning sickness, the first doctor's appointments. My wedding seemed to have become a footnote in the grand story of the baby's arrival. We set the wedding date for 6 months later. I started researching dresses, venues for the ceremony and the reception, excited about the prospect of building this new chapter with Louis. But the excitement was always briefly interrupted by some casual comment from my mother. "Have you thought about how beautiful Lisa will look at the wedding? Or won't the wedding be too close to the birth? Will Lisa be well enough to go?" It was as if my wedding was just an event to be squeezed into Lisa's pregnancy schedule. I felt a pang in my heart every time I noticed this lack of focus, this constant prioritization of my sister. One afternoon, while I was flipping through wedding magazines, my mother called. I thought we would finally talk about the flowers or the music, but the first thing she said was, "Lisa felt very sick today. We went to the doctor, and everything is fine, but she's on bed rest." I spent over half an hour listening about the scare, the relief, the care Lisa needed. When I finally managed to mention something about the color palette I was considering for the wedding, the response was a distracted, "Oh, yes, dear, whatever you think is best." I felt a lump in my throat. It was always like this. Lisa's life was an exciting drama, while mine was just background noise. Even my achievements, like the promotion I received at work, were met with a "that's good, dear," immediately followed by some news about the pregnancy. Louis noticed my frustration. He hugged me tightly, said he understood how I felt, but that the love we had was enough. But it wasn't just about the wedding itself. It was about feeling like I wasn't important, that my happiness was secondary to my own family. One day, while we were choosing our wedding bands, my mother called again. "Stella, dear, don't you think it would be a good idea to postpone the wedding a little? Lisa hasn't been feeling very well lately, and it would be so sad if she couldn't enjoy the party." At that moment, the patience I had been cultivating with so much effort ran out. I looked at Louis, who was watching me with a worried expression. I felt a cold anger run through my veins. It was my wedding, my future, and it seemed like everything was being put on the back burner because of my sister. Mom, I said, trying to keep my voice steady, we've already set the date. We've already organized so many things. The wedding is important to me and Louis. There was silence on the other end of the line. Then my mother's voice sounded a little resentful. Of course, dear. Do whatever you think is best. I was just thinking about Lisa. I hung up the phone with trembling hands. Louis came over and hugged me. Are you okay? He asked, his voice soft. No, Louis, I replied, tears starting to roll down my face. I'm not okay. I feel like my life doesn't matter to them. That my happiness is always less important than Lisa's. That night, we talked a lot. Louis listened to me patiently, hugged me, and reminded me of the love we shared, the life we were building together. He made me see that our little family, the one we were creating, was what really mattered. But the seed of doubt and hurt had already been planted. The wedding preparations continued, but the joy was no longer the same. Every detail seemed laden with a subtle sadness, the absence of genuine enthusiasm from my family. The weeks leading up to the wedding were a roller coaster of emotions for me. On one hand, the anxiety and happiness of being about to marry Louis, the man who loved and valued me for who I was. On the other hand, the growing feeling of invisibility from my own family. Conversations with my mother became almost a predictable script. They would start with a brief nod to my wedding, some generic question about a vendor or a detail of the ceremony, and inevitably veer towards Lisa and the pregnancy. It was about the baby's kicks, about the nighttime cravings. I tried a few times to steer the subject back to my wedding. I talked about the dress fitting, the cake tasting, the choice of music. But my accounts were met with a distracted, "That's nice," before the conversation returned to the central theme, Lisa's pregnancy. Even the bridal shower, organized by my friends, ended up being overshadowed. My mother called the day before, worried because Lisa was very tired and might not be able to attend. The implication was clear. Lisa's absence would be a greater tragedy than my celebration. Lisa ended up not going to the bridal shower, and my mother didn't go either. She stayed home to take care of Lisa. I understood the concern for Lisa, but I couldn't avoid the sadness, disappointment, and frustration of always being second. Amidst this storm of indifference, Louis was my safe harbor. He constantly reminded me that our day would be about us, about our love. He made an effort to cheer me up, to focus on the details that brought us joy. But I felt a weight in my heart, a silent sadness for this lack of genuine support from my family. The guest list also became a point of subtle friction. My parents insisted on inviting a few more relatives on their side to honor pregnant Lisa. It seemed like the wedding was, in some way, an opportunity to also celebrate the future mother. But then something I definitely didn't expect happened. The baby shower was scheduled for the same day as my wedding. My mother called me to tell me, "Dear, could you possibly reschedule the wedding for another day? Lisa needed to schedule the baby shower for the same day as your wedding. Martin will be traveling for work, and they would like to move the celebration forward." I was stunned. I couldn't even process the information. "Mom, I can't reschedule. Everything for the wedding is already organized. There's no way." I replied, stammering. "Come on, honey, you can try. Make an effort to manage it, please," she insisted. "It's impossible, Mom. I can't cancel now at the last minute," I said nervously, holding back tears. "It's a shame, dear, but I'll need to help your sister with the preparations. She's not able to do it alone," she replied. "Wait, can't they schedule it for after the wedding when Martin returns from his trip?" I asked, even though I already knew the answer. "No, dear, they've already decided. Unfortunately, I won't be able to attend your wedding. I'll be helping your sister." She ended the call. But I was still in shock at what had happened. How could they not reschedule the baby shower? Why schedule it for the same day as my wedding, the day that is so important to me? When Louis got home, he found me crying on the sofa. He quickly came to hug me. "What happened?" I told him the whole situation. He looked into my eyes and said, "My love, don't be like this. Our big day will still be special for the two of us. If your parents and your sister can't understand and respect you, it's a shame. But we are going to live this day that we've dreamed of so much, regardless of what they do." He hugged me even tighter. The final dress fitting was a bittersweet moment. I felt beautiful, radiant, imagining the moment when Louis would see me at the altar. But my mother's absence weighed heavily on me. On the eve of the wedding, I spent the night at a friend's house, as tradition dictates, but the joy wasn't complete. I missed my mother, that unconditional love and support that I had always hoped for but rarely received. The call I received from her that night was quick, focused on wishing me good luck, but it soon ended with her saying she needed to help Lisa with the baby shower preparations. Lying in my friend's bed, alone with my thoughts, I felt a wave of sadness wash over me. It was my wedding, one of the most important days of my life, and I felt alone, almost as if I were doing something wrong by not being as focused on my sister's pregnancy as the rest of my family. But then, Louis's face appeared in my mind. His smile, his loving gaze. I remembered our conversations, our plans, the life we were building together. And for the first time in a long time, I felt a flame of determination ignite within me. That was our day, our story, and nothing, no one could take that away from us. The next day, while I was getting ready, I looked in the mirror and saw a different woman. A woman who had learned to find strength in herself and in the love of her partner. A woman ready to start a new chapter, with or without the unconditional approval of her family. The church was beautifully decorated, with white flower arrangements and candles that created a soft and romantic atmosphere. As I walked down the aisle, arm in arm with my Uncle Philip, since my parents also didn't attend the wedding to help Lisa with the baby shower, I felt a mixture of nervousness and excitement. But, above all, I felt a silent determination that this day would be mine and Louis's. Louis was at the altar, with a radiant smile that made me feel like the world around us disappeared. His eyes conveyed all the love and support I needed at that moment. As we exchanged vows, our words echoed with the promise of a future built together, a future where we would be each other's priority. During the ceremony, I looked at the guests. Some of my relatives showed up, some cousins and aunts and uncles, but not my parents. It was hard to accept that, once again, they hadn't chosen me. I tried to enjoy the moment, dance with Louis, talk to our friends, feel the joy of that day. But it was difficult to ignore the feeling that I was being left aside once again. Later, during the toast, Louis's father gave an emotional speech, talking about love, family, and the importance of celebrating special moments. I listened to it and could only think of my own family. Quickly, I felt Louis take my hand. At that moment, a wave of clarity washed over me. I realized that I needed to distance myself from that toxic family dynamic, from that constant feeling of being left out. I deserved to be happy, to be valued, to be a priority in my own life. Louis noticed my expression and held me close. "Are you okay?" he whispered in my ear. "I am," I replied with a firm voice. "I'm okay because I have you. And because I've realized that I need to change some things in my life." That night, as we danced our last dance as fiancés, I felt a strange peace envelop me. I knew that the road ahead wouldn't be easy, that facing my family would be painful, but I also knew it was necessary. I needed to break free from that shadow, from that constant comparison, to be able to live my own life fully. The first few months of marriage were a period of transition for Louis and me. We moved into a new apartment, which we decorated with our personal touches, creating a space that reflected our individuality and our love. It was a relief to have a place that was just ours, a refuge where we could distance ourselves from the family drama and focus on building our own story. We still kept in touch with my family, but the interactions were less frequent and more superficial. My mother would call to give news about Lisa and the baby, who had been born beautiful and healthy, of course, and my father would send occasional messages with photos of the family gathered at some event. But the calls and visits were always brief, without much room for deep conversations or for sharing the news of our lives. I miss my family, of course. There were moments when loneliness knocked at the door, when the absence of my parents' love and support made me sad. But at the same time, I felt immense relief at no longer being constantly under the weight of comparisons and expectations. For the first time in a long time, I could be myself without worrying about being Lisa's sister or having to compete for my parents' attention. Louis was my greatest support during this period. He understood my need for space and encouraged me to move forward, to focus on our relationship and our plans for the future. He constantly reminded me how much he loved and valued me, and that gave me the strength to face the situation. Little by little, I emotionally distanced myself from my family. Calls and visits became increasingly rare, and conversations shorter and more formal. There were no fights or arguments, just a gradual drifting apart, a tacit acknowledgement that we needed to follow different paths. Years went by, and the distance between me and my family solidified. Lewis and I built a happy and fulfilling life, full of love, respect, and companionship. We traveled, worked, achieved our dreams, always together, always supporting each other. From time to time, I would receive news about my family through mutual friends. I knew Lisa was doing well, that the baby was growing up, that my parents remained the same, always focused on my sister's life. But these news were like distant echoes, fragments of a past that no longer belonged to me. Years later, Lewis and I built our own family. We had children, created unforgettable memories, and built a solid foundation of love and respect. Our children grew up knowing they were unconditionally loved and that their individualities were celebrated. They never had to compete for our attention or feel inferior compared to others. One day, my mother called. She wanted to know about the grandchildren she didn't see much. She called me to talk, said she wanted to reconnect. I was reluctant, as I didn't want to live in that atmosphere of competition for attention anymore, where I always lost. I told her that when I felt ready, I would reach out to her, but that for now, I was at peace with my real family. My life story is not one of happy endings and emotional reconciliations. It's a story about learning to love yourself, to value yourself, and to prioritize yourself. It's about understanding that we can't always change the people around us, and that sometimes we need to step away to find our own happiness. And in the end, that was the greatest lesson I learned. That true family is not necessarily the one we are born into, but the one we choose to build. The one that loves us, respects us, and values us for who we truly are. And for that reason, I never regretted distancing myself from my family and building my own with Lewis. What did you think of Stella's story? Did you identify with her? Share in the comments if you've ever been through similar situations. If you liked this story, please like and share this video and subscribe to the channel for more inspiring stories.